What is up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Surfing the Stream, where every week we're on a quest to find out what is the greatest movie of all time. I finally decided to revisit Zack Snyder's director's cut of Rebel Moon Part 1, Chalice of Blood. It is legitimately one of the longest titles I have ever seen on a movie. So, just to give you a little disclaimer, a little backstory of how I felt about Part 1 when I initially watched the PG-13 version, I thought it was okay, but I mean, legitimately, all the complaints that I had about it were things that I just don't like about Zack Snyder, and all the things that I did like about it were all the things that I do like about Zack Snyder. So, the director's cut is ultimately what is so great and frustrating about Zack Snyder as a director. Let me preface everything by saying I enjoyed this much more than the PG-13 version. The characters feel a little more developed than what they were. The world feels a little bit more fleshed out, and the R-rated Star Wars is as advertised. But the writing is still an issue. So basically, it's a Zack Snyder movie through and through. And before I go further in this review, the R-rated aspect of this movie is absolutely fantastic. I feel like they go like a third of this movie without ever utilizing that R rating, and that's really towards the back end of the movie. But when they utilize that R rating, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. It makes you wonder, what would this movie look like if Lucasfilm was behind it? Got me very curious. So if you've been a fan of the podcast for any length of time, or if you know me, then you know kind of where I'm going to start off with this review, and that is the slow motion. And this movie, it's actually pretty good, guys. I'm not gonna lie. I thought the slow motion in this movie was done pretty damn good. I've been a big critic of Zack Snyder's overuse of slow motion in just about all of his damn movies. The Justice League version is, I'm telling you, a third of the movie is damn slow motion. His use of it in the director's cut of Rebel Moon Part 1 is very, very smart. I'm sure sometimes you roll your eyes at it, and that's just typical Zack Snyder. But for the most part, I thought he saved these slow motion moments for those perfect moments. And it's like, okay, that deserves to be in slow motion. The movie looks really great, but I don't know of a Zack Snyder movie that just doesn't look good. The visuals are absolutely fantastic, and other than a few moments here or there, the CGI is definitely one of the highlights. And for a Netflix movie, the CGI is pretty damn good. And Zack Snyder is able to create some spectacular imagery here, but again, that's no different than any of his other movies. Now, here's where this director's cut helps and hurts it. I don't know if people are going to agree with me on this, but the extra runtime, absolutely greatly expands on this universe. The world and lore within it are just so rich and deep. But again, Zack Snyder is one of the best at creating real lived-in universes. And it also kind of hurts it for me this time around because there's just so much lore here that it's almost exhausting and overly convoluted because of it. Now, I do feel like this world would be best served with multiple watches. So I do feel like I need to watch this a couple more times to really get the most out of this movie. But with one watch, it's still very overwhelming. And I'm crazy for thinking this, but I still don't feel like he has enough runtime here to fully explore this world that he has created. It's so dense and rich with lore and world building that it feels like we never get a lot of the stuff that's in this movie. It feels like it's just, oh man, that's some really cool stuff. Let's throw it in the movie. And he throws it in there for half a second, that it never gives it a moment to shine. And he does that so much in a lot of his movies, but I feel like it is worse in this. And I guess that's just saying something because I want more of it. I want more of this world. And really, that kind of goes hand in hand with some of the editing choices that we see throughout not only a lot of his movies, but this movie in particular, because it just seems like we just zip by some things and it's just like, okay, I understand you had to cut some things, but I feel like this would have been very important for character development purposes. So it just feels like it's uneven with the editing for sure. But overall, guys, I definitely like this version way more, and I'll definitely be watching it again in the future because, like always, Zack Snyder does some really cool shit that gets me excited. So I'll end this review with the fact that if you liked Part 1 PG-13 version, then this director's cut is probably going to make that movie better for you. You're probably going to enjoy this a lot more. If you didn't like Rebel Moon Part 1, you're not going to like the director's cut of Rebel Moon Part 1. It is honestly just way more of the same, and the issues you have will just be fully expanded in this movie. But if you have seen Part 1 of the director's cut of Rebel Moon, please let me know in the comments below. And while you're at it, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. That would greatly benefit us. And I'll catch y'all next time on another episode. Laters.